Good afternoon. I'm here with Matt Pavarnik, who leads our Greater Topeka Chamber of Commerce and Go Topeka, and Kayla Bittler, who is the new Strategic Coordinator for Momentum 2022, to talk today a little bit about the Momentum 2022 plan. So what I wanted to start with, Matt, is you can talk just a little bit about how the whole process was born. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I got to tell you, my mother spent about 2 hours reading yesterday's publication, and she called me on the phone, and she said, I think for the first time in 20 years, I understand what you do for a living. So thank you for that.
That's
You've
good to
kind
know.
of cleared that up. No, if you go all the way back to when I arrived in Topeka, January 2016, one of the very first things that people started saying is, you need to go out and raise money. Because seizing the opportunity investment is coming to an end soon. And I said, well, I'm more than happy to do that, but I want to know why we would be raising money. What would we be doing with the money that we raised? And the answer was either blank stares or, well, economic development. And I said, can I see our strategic plan? What are our metrics? How are we going to measure our success? And then really more blank stares at that time. So really, at that point in time, I knew that Go Topeka needed to have a very strong strategic plan. So we started talking to our elected leaders and our community private sector leaders, and it really turned from the fact that went from Go Topeka needing a strategic plan to really the entire community needing its economic development strategic plan, or as we had called it for a long time, a holistic economic development strategy.
I was relieved to see the name change, I must say.
Yeah. So we embarked on a journey that was about a year-long journey, and engaged a lot of citizens, engaged a lot of our volunteer leaders, and what we have now is we have a aspirational but attainable strategy in front of us that we want to implement in the next several years.
How critical was diversity in the community to bring into this and have input from all segments of the community?
Well, economic development, creating economic prosperity, is a team sport. And when I say it's a team sport, I mean it's from every citizen to our elected leaders to our private sector leaders. So diversity across the spectrum is absolutely critical, and I think that was reflected in the steering committee that we put together.
Mm-hmm. There were 43 members on the steering committee, is that right?
Yeah, 43. The strategy consultant that we worked with out of Atlanta did not recommend 43. They thought that was way too many. We pushed back pretty hard and wanted to have a very inclusive steering committee. And now I think that they would tell you that it probably was one of the best working steering committees that they've worked with in any community.
I remember you saying when we talked about it that we got 96% consensus, is that right, on the final plan, which I guess they said was pretty unusual?
They experienced more like 75 and 80 because really a lot of times it's analysis paralysis, or should we have one more meeting, or before we sign off on this. So yeah, 96% consensus that this was the final plan.
Great. Well, so now we have that plan, and Kayla joins the team. So tell me a little bit about what your role is going to be.
Sure. So Matt describes my role as basically the auditor of the plan, and I love that description too, because that really makes it pretty clear to people. So as we go through the implementation plan for the strategy, it will be my task to then make sure that we have all the right groups working together, all the key organizations involved that have objectives that are similarly aligned with ours, and really just to make sure that they're all working in the same direction.
That sounds like kind of a nightmare to me. I believe when we talked, you said something about herding cats.
I did use that phrase, yeah.
But there are a lot of different elements involved in this plan, and that's one of the things I think, and to let everyone know, the plan is available online at TopekaShawneeCountyStrategy.com. So you can take a look at some of what Market Street put together there. But it really takes a very comprehensive approach to Topeka and Shawnee County. Can you talk a little bit about the shift in economic development from jobs and capital investment to this quality of life concept?
In very simple terms, in order for us to grow, in order for us to continue to have positive momentum and growth, people need to want to live here. And that's that is as simple as I can possibly put it. So I think in the past, when we had thought about economic development, it was creating jobs, creating capital investments, and keeping the jobs that we already have, which, by the way, is still very important. You'll find that in the plan. We're not just going to stop doing business attraction, business retention, and expansion. But now, the way that our populations have shifted in the United States, the most precious thing we have is population and workers. And no longer do young people, or really anybody for that matter, say, I got a job in that community, so I'm going to move to that community. Most people say, I'm going to move to that community, and then I'm going to find a job. So for us, there's been a little bit of a transformation, a shift, and that is that quality of place, quality of life, talent attraction is economic development.
Wow, that is really a significant shift. So how do you go about even tackling it? Seems like such a large subject to me.
It is a big subject. Actually, this entire plan is a big subject, and if I read this plan in one setting, it's like 60-plus page strategy. It's intimidating. But the fact that we have Kayla here to help us to really eat this elephant one bite at a time is very helpful, and it's a 5-year plan, we're not trying to do this in the next 6 months. So you say it's a big job. It is a big job. It's a big strategy, but we've actually said it's a 60-month strategy. So in month 1, there's things for us to do. In month 2, in month 22, in month 40, in month 55, and in month 60.
And so it'll be your job to keep us on that timeline?
Right.
Oh,
Absolutely.
that does sound like fun. So tell me a little bit about where you start. When you look at, let's talk a little bit about maybe the 5 pillars.
Okay.
And not to trick you, I don't know if you have those memorized, they're somewhere in here. But can you talk about the 5 pillars or stories that were identified in the report?
Sure. There are 5 pillars that were identified in the report. They align very similarly with those stories. And to kind of go back just a minute ago to your quality of life that you were saying, one of those key stories is sort of a persistent low morale that we have here in Topeka. And I think that is one of the very key parts to start with, because we really have to address that with our citizens. We really have to get the people that are in Topeka to like Topeka before we can really think about growing Topeka. And so that's going to be almost step 1. If in all of this, if you had to identify step 1, it would be really starting to work on that morale and getting people to spread positivity and to spread positive messages and positive news, and when great things happen in the community, to share those. Not focusing on the negative, because every community has those negative aspects. Bad things happen everywhere. But we have to shift to talking about those positive things, and that's going to be key to the success of the plan and to the community, really.
How do you do that? I mean, and I have been covering news here for about 20 years or a little bit longer, and that is something that's come up for all of that time. How do we tackle a morale or the way that we think about the city?
Part of it is going to be through showing incremental progress. I think that's going to be key, showing that great things have happened. The study that Market Street did that formed this the strategic plan for us, they talked about how Topekans are more fond of the city and more likely to say favorable things now that there have been significant changes downtown. And so it's those little things that have started to boost that morale a little bit, but we have a long way to go, and we have a lot of groups that we can work with. Heartland Visioning is a huge player in that particular aspect of this plan, and so working with them as far as brainstorming and methodology, as far as how do we reach people, how do we help spread those positive news, and of course relationships like this one, and having this opportunity to do this is fantastic. So
how about this? It's actually already happened. So I've been here 18 months. And my experience just traveling regionally, if I'm in Kansas City or if I'm in Wichita, if I'm in different parts of the state, 18 months ago, when I would be in one of those communities and I would say that I just relocated to Topeka, I saw a bit of they felt sorry for me look on their face. What I'm feeling now, though, is people are actually saying, wow, I'm hearing there's really good things going on. What is going on there? It sounds exciting. And that's why I'm so excited about the term momentum. We do have serious momentum, and it's leaking out of Topeka right now, and we're hearing it. I mean, people are hearing that good things are happening here.
That's great. So when you look at the reports that came out initially, what were some of the big areas of concern for you that we need to address?
Probably the one that scared me the most, that was a bit of a surprise, was the statistic that 40% of people that make $40,000 or more a year live outside of our community. So that one surprised me the most. I wouldn't say that the initial community assessment was just full of surprises. I think there were some hard truths in there, but that one was one that kept me up at night a little bit.
Yeah.
And made me realize that maybe what we've been saying, that quality of place and quality of life is economic development, that we were on the right track. So.
And just to add on to that a little bit, you know, a tangent of that is that a lot of major employers here in Topeka, when they recruit outside of Topeka, Shawnee County, the story that they sell to people is, hey, come work for us in Topeka, but live in Lawrence or live in Kansas City. And to me, that's sad.
Yeah.
I mean, and it kind of, I mean, all of these things are tied together, but it does start to speak to go back to that low morale. You know, we're not proud of ourselves enough to sell it.
Right. And I know Heartland Visioning has been working on something called Recruit Topeka First. Is that right? Is that a
Recruit Topeka Shawnee County First.
Okay.
And where they are is they are working with our recruiters, our HR executives and recruiters, and with our realtors. And so when we are looking at somebody that is coming into the community, that they're recruiting and selling Topeka and Shawnee County first before they steer them to another community.
That's definitely a positive change that could be made.
Well, and it's nice to have the HR and recruiters and the realtors around the same table working on an issue like that.
Well, and I would imagine that they have a lot of insight into why they aren't able to sell Topeka as easily as, say, Lawrence or Kansas City. So that would be good data as well. We talked quite a bit about metrics and how important they are to this process. So can you talk a little bit about how you both will use metrics?
Well, the first thing is to take the 40 or 50 metrics that have been recommended as good metrics for us to track and get some consensus and some buy-in from our community as to what are the, is it 8, is it 10, is it 12, is it 14, 15 metrics that we're really going to focus on that will then change all of those other metrics. So we have actually seeded a metrics task force. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of metrics already established, but what we're doing right now is seeding this metrics task force, which is going to be chaired by Gina Millsap, the CEO of the library, and I would say a room full of smarter people than I am that will really dig into these metrics and really kind of come to consensus on how we're going to measure ourselves, how we're going to give ourselves a grade as to how we're performing to this plan. We just hired Freddie, who's now our economist, who's going to be staffing that and helping with that. So, you know, you measure what matters. And I think it's easy to develop a plan like this and maybe skirt by the metric side of it. Because if you skirt by the metric side of it, no matter what happens, you can say you're successful, right? But with metrics, it's a little bit more difficult. My son can come back from his freshman year of college and say I was successful. There's only one thing I'm measuring, and that's the grades. That's the grades.
Yeah. Is that, I mean, that can be a little bit scary, I think, sometimes. I think we had talked at one point about progress and how quickly people want things to happen. I hear that about downtown. Yay, we put a lot of money down there. It's clearly a different landscape than what it was, but we still have a lot of empty buildings. I mean, there's always kind of that give and take. How do you approach that from keeping people excited about the plan? And
well, I think that the key thing there is to make sure that you develop milestones and that you celebrate incremental success. I mean, if you don't do that, if you have day 1 and year 5 and there's no sort of metrics in between and there's no milestones in between, then people won't be motivated and they won't be inspired to keep going. But if we can show them that incremental progress, if we can celebrate every time, you know, a new business or a new restaurant or what have you opens downtown or anywhere in Topeka, then that's progress and that's exciting and that keeps people going.
that was something that I think was critical. There's been a lot of effort and energy focused on the downtown. How important is it for people to accept and realize that this is a plan for all of Topeka and Shawnee County?
It is a plan for all of Topeka and Shawnee County, yeah. And Downtown is important. I mean, it is our core business district. It's actually now downtowns are critical to future entertainment. I just recruited a 24-year-old. My son is living here, and downtown's important to him. And so the way I look at it is downtown is a rising tide raises all ships, and it really is the center of our community. But really looking at every corner of our community is important. Looking at the county, looking at our rural areas. Looking at East Topeka, a focus of this plan is on East Topeka. And so everybody in the community, no matter where they live, should have the opportunity to succeed in this community.
One of the things, Kayla, that we talked about was that there are already things going on in the community that fit within the plan.
Right.
And I remember you saying, and it really struck me, that we aren't here to create a whole bunch of new groups and organizations to do things that are already being done.
Yes.
How do you incorporate what's happening here with this plan?
So that's a really big challenge that I have. Because again, there are a lot of objectives outlined in the strategy, and there are a lot of groups that have activities that if they don't match up perfectly with the objective, they're at least very similar. And so what I need to do then in getting out in the community is talk to those people, figure out what it is that their organization is doing, what their directive is. You know, and it may be that said organization could carry out entirely an objective within the strategy, but maybe they need more resources of some sort. You know, maybe they need more volunteers or anything like that. And that's how I can help them make that happen.
You know, we use the term we're jumping on a moving train in a lot of instances. So on these strategies, there's already a lot of activity that is happening. And by the way, we're not waiting until January to start implementing the plan. It's being implemented as we speak.
We'll talk about that process, kind of what happens next. What can people expect to see and hear from you?
I'll let you take that one.
All right. Well, I want to back up for just a moment, because it is really important to me that people understand that we are not here trying to take credit for their work. Again, these organizations in many cases have been working on their goals or directives for many, many years. And this is not a credit grab or anything like that. These are the things that are most important to Topeka and Topekans, and we really want to make sure that those happen. And so then to answer your question, which was, I'm sorry, what was your question?
No, that's okay. What happens next?
Okay, so 2017 is devoted primarily to sort of structurally setting up the groups that I need to move forward. So this year then, I have 7 work groups, plus the East Topeka Council, plus the Metrics Task Force, to sort of manage and align and get set up for 2018. And when 2018 starts, our work group meetings will continue. We're actually already starting them this year.
Yeah.
But they will continue on into 2018, and we'll really start delving into those first-year objectives. The first-year objectives are all outlined in the strategy, but it will it'll really provide us the impetus and the momentum to keep it going.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've actually broken the plan down in 2 ways. One is it's broken down month by month over 5 years, and then it's also broken down into different strategies. And so we've broken the plan out, and different work groups are going to be working on different parts of the strategy.
Does it remain flexible? Is it something that you still expect to see shifting and changing as we dive into it, or do you think it's pretty well laid out for at least these first few years?
That is an excellent question. You want to take it? Yeah.
The strategy is pretty well laid out. We had a lot of buy-in when we formed this strategy, a lot of community input. We haven't mentioned the survey that everybody took so far. There was a survey that went out in August of 2016. 2,300 residents of the county took that survey. And that input was relied upon heavily when this was all compiled. Then there were focus groups and individual interviews. And so this is the community's plan. And so to deviate too much from that would be not appropriate. I mean, it would be saying, okay, well, the community said to do this, but we think to do this. And that's not at all what we're here to do. We're here to try to carry out what the community wants to see for Topeka.
Okay.
That's a great answer. We owe it to the community to stick to plan and not let ourselves get caught up in the mission creep, and this keeps us on track. It gives us the ability to stay focused. I would say we get 2.5 years in, it will be probably important for us to do a mid-course correction, look at the environment, see how we're progressing, and see if there's changes. One thing that can change is the way we implement. So as we implement, we might
What do you think is going to be the most challenging thing in this plan?
Actually moving to metrics. It's a short period of time, so we didn't name this plan Momentum 2050. That would have been a lot less stressful to name it Momentum 2050, saying we have until 2050 to get all this stuff done. We've taken a short period of time, 2018 to 2022, and we've said that we're going to accomplish these objectives and actually move the needle on these issues in such a short period of time. So that's probably the thing that stresses us out the most, but invigorates us too.
Well, some of the things I know outlined in the plan are almost big societal issues that every community is struggling with, and for me, it seems like to move the needle on those. Childhood poverty, high school graduation rates, those kinds of things. How do you really tackle those issues?
Those are two really different issues. Again, we're going to have to work with our partners. Now, I will tell you, it's not like Momentum 2022 is the first time that Topeka and Shawnee County is going to start working on childhood poverty. Right. Just talk to our United Way. Just talk to the folks in Pine Ridge. There are a lot of efforts that are already taking place. High school graduation rates, or really all of the cradle to career initiatives that we're working on. I think it's going to get back to an agreed upon set of metrics, and agreeing that if we move these metrics from a micro standpoint, then all of these other secondary metrics will move positively from a macro standpoint. So again, I think it's a bit of measuring what matters. And you mentioned other communities. See, I think it's a good point. This is a very competitive game we're in. I mean, our competition is not one another. We talk about economic development as a team sport. Every community in the United States is trying to clean our clocks. And that's who we're competing with. We're competing with other communities, other states, other countries, and they're trying to clean our clocks. They need the talent. They need the population, just like we do.
Talent comes up quite a bit, both in the plan as I go out and talk to business owners in town. What do you see as some of the workforce challenges that we're facing?
If you were talking to Molly and our economic development folks, that is the first question that comes up when we're trying to recruit a company is, where am I going to get my employees? They want to know what our unemployment rate is, and they want to know where the employees are going to come from. If they get any inkling or feeling whatsoever that they're not going to be able to recruit a workforce, and talent could be a welder, talent could be someone working on a line, or talent could be an accountant. It really is the commodity that's most important right now.
So tell me what you're most excited about now.
To pick one objective that's literally outlined in the strategy, the one that I am personally most excited about is there is a call to have a restaurant incubator associated with 712 Innovations. That one to me is really exciting. So the concept of a restaurant incubator, then, if you can picture, say, a warehouse, okay, and we put in a massive commercial kitchen, and then that's all sort of back of house, okay, and several different chefs can work back there. But then front of house, you have the opportunity to have storefronts. And so those chefs can try to learn to run a business. It's not cooking school, but they come, they practice their trade, they sell their trade, and so then we have the opportunity to not only potentially build our supply of talent, right, but also have the opportunity to go there and to sample all of the different goodies that they might have there. And I think that's exciting. I think that that's kind of a solution, if you will, to two different issues kind of wrapped into one, and I'm excited about that.
That's great.
I'm most excited because I feel like now we're a team. And we all have our paddles, and they may be different, but we have different jobs, that we're all rowing in the same direction.
That's great. Well, I thank you. We are going to switch now. Thank you so much for joining
Really
us.
smart
I
people.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we are bringing in the three people who were leading that group of 43, the TriChairs. Will be Mayor Larry Walgast, who represented the city. Hi, welcome.
Hello.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Shelly Bueller, who's one of our county commissioners for the county.
Nice to see you as well.
And Keith Warda, and if we can scoot in here
Scoot
real
over
close so that
close.
we're, yep. Keith Warda is with Bartlett and West, and I always want to call you CEO, and it's president, right?
Yes.
I have to watch that. So thank you so much. You guys had the, I don't know about enviable or difficult task of pulling this together. Can you talk a little bit about how you came to be in these positions, maybe just how you were drawn to this plan?
Well, I'm working with the chamber in Topeka. It was something that was developing among those boards, within those boards, and so we were aware of that coming along. And I think because of our roles of the commissioner and I, and then with Keith and his role, with the chamber, that we were asked to participate in this, putting together a steering committee. And that was a very interesting process.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of got us involved in a part of it.
We were asked, and we all three said yes. So I don't know if there were others that were asked, but
Well, the
we all said
public-private
yes.
partnership comes up a lot, and that certainly is reflected in what you guys do. Can you
Correct.
talk maybe a little bit about why that kind of partnership's important?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of the reason why I was chosen as one of the chairs. I think public-private partnerships are evidenced in what's happening downtown here. I think it's a great example of what's going on. I think it's something that needs to continue on within our community. I think as private businesses, we all understand that there's a return on investment if we're a place where people want to live. If we can attract that talent, that just makes sense for our businesses.
Absolutely. I'm sorry.
Well, I think, and in Topeka, it's working.
Yeah,
All
it is.
communities talk about the public-private partnership, but then when they hear how we are doing it here, how successful we have been, they're impressed.
That's great. The downtown certainly is a reflection of what happened there. From a business perspective, and back to that workforce thing that Matt and I talked a little bit, Matt and Kayla spoke about earlier, how is this critical to your business growth?
Well, it's like I said, we need to have a community that attracts people. So as a business where we're interested in engineers, technologists, we especially have a difficult time because of the limited pool. We have to have a community that people want to live in for us to be able to attract the people that we need for our business. But that holds universal to other businesses too. I mean, this needs to be a place where people want to live. They want to be here for our businesses.
Yeah. Shelly, from the county perspective, do you hear from people talking about a lot of these issues that are raised in Momentum 2022?
All the time, all the time. I think it's a sign of a healthy community when you are looking at what you can continuously improve. And certainly our work is continuous. It's never done. And so in any way that when we're looking at education, when we're looking at private businesses, when we're looking at nonprofits, how we can improve the life of this community, those who are living here, that helps the county. So,
And I assume that holds true as well
Yeah.
from the city perspective.
Well, I think as elected officials, we hear from people what they want or what we should be doing, what the city should be doing. And I think that's what's so exciting about this Momentum 2022 is that finally we're sort of like bringing it together. All the different aspects, the private sector are part of this, and a plan is just outstanding about how we can go step by step and attempt to bring about some of the things that we hear about, we want to do all the time, but now we're getting some help in that process.
I know one of the things that, as the stories posted online, people brought up the age-old, I think you and I have discussed before, so are they fixing the potholes?
Interesting
So is
you
this
should
a-
ask. Right. Well,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
and I can say the interesting aspect is we had a very in-depth study done of the level of our streets, and we know there are problems. And of course, the streets didn't get this bad overnight. It's taking a number of years to finally getting them up to the level they should be. But in 2017, the governing body of the city made the commitment to increase the spending by several $1 million. And through the plan, that will put us at the level where we will be making progress. Right now, the streets are almost deteriorating as fast as we improve them. And so we're not making the progress that we need, and it takes more money.
Yeah.
And several years ago, we were around the 13 to $15 million level. Now we're going up to 17 to 20. Within a couple of years, we're going to be putting over $20 million, $24 million a year into our streets. This year, we have 16 projects underway. And people don't realize, because they see their area, they're aware of the streets there, but they drive around the city. There are 16 different individual projects underway. And we can't close more streets. I mean,
Yeah.
we all know
Please
how many.
don't.
Yeah, we know if you're going to fix streets, you have to close them. But it is happening, and I can only say we have to be patient. Just like change doesn't occur overnight, we can't fix all the streets at one time, but it is improving. We're taking significant steps.
Morgan, I think it's really important to recognize, too, that the steering committee realized that infrastructure is a key part of economic development. I mean, economic development is everything. It's having that quality of infrastructure also. They built it right into one of the goal areas that we need to have quality infrastructure consistent with what the mayor just said about streets.
I think ever since we've had the economic development, the Shawnee County countywide sales tax since 2004, that was economic development, streets and bridges, and that was renewed. And so in that plan now we have economic development, streets, bridges, and we have some quality of life. So I think that is the county and the city's responsibility then to continue to work on that infrastructure. That helps improve the community along with what's mentioned in the plan. It's pretty well rounded.
And most of the money for the streets comes from sales tax. It's the countywide, and then the city has its own sales tax, primarily, almost entirely for streets infrastructure. And that one is expiring, and we're going to have to come up to a renewal, a vote to continue it. We are hopeful. If not, we'll go backward on the streets.
Yeah. It's always the funding issue.
Yeah.
It is, but I think there's also the pavement management plan that both
Yes.
the city and the county follow. And how do we keep those streets so they're lasting a little bit longer, that we're replacing the ones that need it the most. There's a whole science to roads, and so that's really important as well.
Do you find a lot of buy-in, or is it tough to convince people that quality of life is really part of economic development? I mean, that's a big shift.
Yeah. And I think that's a shift that the steering committee had to make at the very start. Well, all of us did at the very start. We're used to hearing about economic development as it pertains to attracting new businesses to our community. But this looks at it differently. It says that it's everything. We have to be a community that people are attracted to, that people who live here want to stay here. So that means it needs to be safe. We need to have good infrastructure. We've got to lift up those people within our community that needed to be lifted up. It's about having a good downtown, a core that people are attracted to. It's a lot of different things. And so I think once people start to think about it, they say, we have to make our community better, well-rounded, all the way around.
I think it has been a shift. It's been an evolution of sorts, and economic development used to kind of stand alone, and now I really feel like economic development and community development are on a more even level. And what we need now is to embrace that and everybody to, again, work on those metrics for improvement. That's just healthy. That's a good, healthy place to live, and that's where I want to live.
I think just as a follow-up to that, too, that means it's everybody's responsibility. So everybody within our community, within Topeka, within Shawnee County, has a responsibility to contribute to the betterment of our community.
And quality of life is a big, everybody has their own definition of that phrase, what it is and how do you go about fixing it. And in a sense, I think that's good too. There isn't one thing. It isn't just downtown. It isn't just this, but it's the neighborhoods. It's the different areas, from infrastructure to the schools to the education systems. All of this is who we are, and that's what we have to work on.
Mayor, we talk about the fact that this plan wasn't in place. Is this something that you think Topeka has needed?
Well, this particular plan, yes. I mean, we have had different plans in the past, and I've been involved in some 10, 15 years ago. But I think it is the most comprehensive. And I think that aspect, the aspect that we involve all areas of the community, the ethnic, the religious, faith people, the different geographic areas, city, county, organizations, business, labor. I think so then you get the tie-in. And we can see that happening. It filters down and people become aware of it. And that didn't happen before with the other visioning programs.
I was really impressed with the East Topeka Council because I had not heard of anything quite like that before. And I know Matt said he thought it was pretty rare in these types of plans to have a specific geographic location highlighted. Why did you all feel like that was a critical part of what Momentum does?
Well, I think there's been a concern for some time that that particular part of our community hasn't been well represented. So we wanted to, in a very public way, represent that part of the community. So the work groups that we're setting up, they will all, the chairs of those work groups will all participate in the East Topeka Council. So we're integrating East Topeka in everything that we're doing.
And I think it goes back even before us, 20 years.
I agree.
They have felt a need that have a development, a program there. And this has been occurring for a number of years in Jado and Go Topeka about some type of an economic development. We work to have companies locate there. And of course, Research is one that's on the east side, and that's very important with the new development they're doing. But it was interesting when this came before Jado to vote on the expenditure of funds, we had this outpouring of individuals from the area. I don't know, 20, 25 people got up and spoke in passionate terms how much this meant to them. And to see that and feel that yes, for the whole community, this is something we need to do.
I think maybe the difference is, we've had lots of great people have done wonderful things for our community, but I think there's a different spirit of cooperation now, and as Matt said earlier, we're on the same team, and we want our community to succeed. We want more people to move here. We want to have better experiences here. So I think that spirit of cooperation has maybe something that I think is evident.
And, and the East Topeka Learning Center fits into the workforce
It does.
aspect
It does.
of creating the training. We have, of course, there are always sometimes people who need more skills to meet the jobs that are already available. And this would be some of the things that will be done with the East Topeka Learning Center. And so there's all of that. It's sociological, it's workforce, it's economic development, quality of life, all happening.
How do you keep the excitement that we feel now? And there is a distinct difference, but how do you keep that going?
I think that's one of the challenges. You asked Matt earlier, what does he think is the biggest challenge? I think that's perhaps one of the bigger challenges that we have is keeping the excitement, keeping the momentum, understanding that everything's not going to work out on the time frame that we have planned, exactly how we have planned, but to keep that momentum. And I think it gets back to what Kayla said earlier, celebrating those victories that we have along the way. And certainly we've had several very good victories already over the past few years, and we're going to have more in the next couple of years. And I think that's how we keep it going.
I know when we talked earlier for some of the stories that were in the section, you had highlighted that workforce you thought was going to be one of the real challenges. And I know some of those numbers were a little surprising. Matt highlighted the one that 40% of people who make over $40,000 don't live in Shawnee County. Can you talk a little bit about how that impacts your business and what you think is going to need to happen, all of you, to make some changes there?
Yeah, I think that's one of the stories that developed from the very start. I think that's what we heard from the community is that we have to get better at workforce development. So it's been a very key part of the strategy from day one. And I think that the epiphany that I had along the way was that if we can get people trained, educated, and developed within our community and then keep them here, we're going to be okay. I mean, that's a big part of it right there, is just to get people to stay. So developing a process where you're starting very young and integrating them into the community along the way, having them work with businesses, for example, when they're in high school, so that they understand the community, that's a key part of it. And I think that's a key part of keeping people here within our community and developing our workforce.
Well, I'm reminded of one of the story in your supplement yesterday about those who had come back to Topeka,
Yes.
moved
Yeah, that was
away,
good.
came back. I mean,
Good.
oh my gosh! I mean, and it shows that. And of course, as we say, sometimes people have to move away to realize
Yeah.
what we all do, go through that in life, realize what was there, and then we come back. And I think that story is there. People actually choose Topeka and want to live here and have their career here. And that's what we have to build on. People who've moved away or commute in, that's okay. That's their choice, and they probably won't move back. But we with the new people, the young people, and people coming in, find interest here. And my gosh, we have some pretty good neighborhoods to live in,
Yeah.
and like the houses, and like the streets and schools. So, I think it's going to be a long process, and we have to be patient. I think some of us went through the downtown. That started in 09 and 10, and we had a goal in mind. This is what we're going to do, and there'll be the naysayers, say this is, why are you doing this, and it won't work, but we just keep going. We just keep working on what our goals are.
I'm reminded, I forgot who pointed it out to me, but they talked about an article in the Lawrence newspaper where they were bemoaning the fact that all the jobs weren't in Lawrence. I mean, we talk about people living there, and they're saying we're lacking jobs. So I think that there's always a side to it that we forget to look at sometimes as part of the positives there. So,
Right.
Shelley, for the county, what do you think in this plan? Is there anything that stands out for you that you think is really critical from a county perspective?
Well, I think Parks and Recreation is going to play a key role. I think with riverfront development and the Oregon Trail Park and those types of things, I think that's going to help that quality of life, quality of place. I think with health and collaborate for a strong community and looking at community health, our public health department and our coalition, the Heartland Healthy Neighborhoods, that's going to be another strong area. I also think too, looking at public safety, and 45% of our budget is spent on public safety. So how do we work together with Safe Streets, and how do we work together with Momentum 2022 to address crime and those types of things? So I have a lot of different angles, but I think those to begin with.
Are you overwhelmed at all when you look at this?
I think in a way we probably all are. It's one of those things that there's a lot that needs to be done. We have a long ways to go, but one of the encouraging things in having Market Street involved with this process is they can compare us to other communities, and it was really nice to hear from them that they said what's happening in your community are things that we've seen overcome before. We've seen other communities work past this, and so it gives you a sense that we can do this, but we just have to do it one step at a time.
And we aren't on the ground. I mean, they said too, you have a lot of good things happening.
Exactly.
And so we're not here. We're up here, and then we're going to keep going.
Yeah.
Sure.
I know the inner city visits are always raised as an aspect of development that is really inspirational. You talk about comparing to other communities. Do you think that will be something, are you going to be looking outside of Topeka and Shawnee County to say, what are best practices? How do we approach this?
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing it already, and I'm sure as a community we'll continue to do it. One of the big things that I've learned in some of the inner city visits is that it doesn't happen overnight.
Sure.
That these communities talk about decades of working on their downtown or working on their riverfront and getting it to where it is right now. I think it's a good lesson for all of us that we're going to look for that incremental improvement.
And I think the three of us have been, I don't know how many, inner city trips.
Yeah.
And we've seen it, and Fargo, North Dakota, Oklahoma City.
Des Moines.
They were all described, when they started, they were as we were, or even worse, perhaps. And they got a visioning, and they came together, and it works. So that shows it can be done.
Now, Mayor, I know you're planning on spending a little less time in the government office, so how will you continue to be involved after your term as mayor is over?
Well, I think as we are all citizens, we all have a responsibility to continue to work to help bring about the changes, the opportunities, the challenges, all of this. And I look forward to continuing having a role in all of this.
Now, you've all agreed to continue as TriChairs of the implementation stage, is that right?
Right.
So what does that mean? What will be happening from your perspective during the implementation stage?
For the rest of this year, just meeting closely with Kayla and with Matt, and making sure we're just on track with the implementation plan, meeting our objectives, and then helping get the work group started, that sort of thing.
And I think we share a responsibility to help bring it along, to get the work groups functioning. So they're there and doing their job.
Now, have each of you selected a work group that's particularly close? I know they said they were talking to the steering committee members about things that they were really passionate about to get them involved in different work groups. Is that something that you all will be doing, or?
I don't know that
we
we
yet.
serve.
I think overall,
Yeah.
we're going to work
I've
with
been
all
Involved
of them.
with several, yeah.
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 What do you think just is going to be the most challenging thing going forward?
Well, Matt said earlier, if we could increase the percentage of high school graduates and the people remaining here and the poverty, because those are like global issues for communities. But we do our best. We're going to work at it, and there are already things happening.
I think one of the things that I've noticed over the decades that I've lived here is that it seems like we change oftentimes depending on the city council or the county commission. And I think right now our community, our city and county are in a really good spot. I think everybody is working together, very cohesive. I think maybe one of those challenges will be as the council changes, as the commission changes, as we have other changes in the community, that we stay cohesive. We stay kind of locked arm in arm in attacking the issues within our community.
And I would say, I think the belief that this isn't just a plan for downtown. Well, downtown is important. I represent the west side of the county as well, and that there's a sincere effort in this plan to make sure that we are addressing some tough issues. We listened during the steering committee meetings, and the quality of life is different for different people in this community. And so, but I think there was a sincere belief from the steering committee that we do want the quality of life for everybody in our community to improve. Don't know how that's going to affect you, but that's sincere. And I'm hopeful. I think the challenge is others believing that that's exactly what we want to do, that there's not some hidden agenda here, that we definitely want our community to improve.
And that speaks to, in a sense, credibility, trust.
It does.
They have to people have to feel this is a credible plan, and they trust the leadership going forward, that we have their interests at heart, everyone's.
That can be tough to design, to
It is
define
tough. It
as
is
well.
tough.
I mean, to really understand how that's all working and the different pieces and parts. I know one of the things that's come up, maybe from a perspective, Matt was talking about how as we draw more businesses in, as businesses grow, wages go up as it becomes more competitive. Is that something that you think is, I mean, how do business owners really react in this market where our unemployment is low, which means we're fighting for a pool of workers that's shrinking?
Yeah, well, I think the biggest issue is having that workforce available. You know, that's what I hear from other businesses within our community is we've got to have that workforce available. We've got to have that educated and trained workforce available. And so I think this plan attacks that head on and says, you know, we realize that's one of the big stories within our community now. And it's one of the things that has to be addressed, and it gets back to that cradle to career backbone committee, one of the strong committees within this plan that will address that.
I know. So as we move forward, I expect to be talking a lot with you guys. So looking forward to hearing more about what's happening. And I appreciate you spending the time with us today. This was a lot of fun.
been great.
Thank you so much. And I think,
Exciting time.
yes, it is. Thank you. Zach Ahrens, who's the publisher of the Topeka Capital Journal, is going to be joining me now to talk. He has been on the steering committee. So maybe we'll get him to grade these three on their leadership. I don't know if we want to do that or not, but he's going to join me here. Hi, Zach.
Hi, Morgan.
Hi, good to see you.
Good to see you.
So tell me a little bit about how you got involved with the steering committee. Why was it important for you to have a voice on this project?
Well, first of all, early on, I was invited to come to the table, and as a newer person to Topeka, I thought that was a great opportunity to not only just to watch, how we do things here, but also to get involved and to learn more. And I was impressed. As I looked around the room, our guest today had commented that there was over, I think, 44, 45 people on the steering committee. Just how many different groups were represented. And I've been in some meetings before where you pretty much know what people are going to say, and you almost feel like you know the outcome. We didn't know the outcome, and I think it was a discovery process for all of us. And toward the end, it kind of got fun. We had little voter clicker things, and what I liked about that is before we would take a vote, at the end, basically saying, this is what the people, the citizens have said. This is what we've talked about. Is there buy-in? Do we want to carry this forward? And it wasn't just okay, I'm going to click yes, but there was a kind of a deep breath and saying, okay, this is the task at hand. We are fully committed in following this through. And our guests today have talked about that. It's not cookie cutter. And I think in many ways we're trailblazers, but also we're building on the successes of things that we've already seen. And so I really enjoyed that, being able to be a part of that discussion. But I'm a people watcher, and just being able to watch people and watch the dynamics and the time. I think as we were kind of shuffling guests off just now, you had mentioned about me grading our guests, and I'm going to jump on that if I can.
Absolutely.
Tens across the board. Now, one thing I would say is just how well different entities have come together. We talk about the public-private. We talk about what Keith represents and what Mayor Wolgass represents and Commissioner Bueller and what they all represent. But for this to be holistic, for this to not just be a Topeka or a downtown project, but a county-wide project that isn't a sprint, but a marathon. So as leadership changes over time, this has to be able to be perpetual. It has to continue on. I saw that in the leadership that we had. So I think the choosing of the TriChairs was wise from the beginning, but then to get such a diverse group of people and for us to agree to disagree on certain things, but to all agree that we believe in this plan and we're going to carry it out was really neat to see.
I know Matt has said several times that Market Street, like they warned him, oh, you're going to start with 43, but by the second meeting you'll be down 40% or something. I mean, and he said they were stunned that so many people stuck with it, which says something about what the belief in what you were doing.
And I think the communication was strong. I think that helped. We felt like it was meaningful. So many of those people throughout the room have a lot of meetings to go to, or they've given up family time or work time for it. And so making it well worth our time, I saw from the beginning. It was thoughtful, but it also moved along as it needed to move along. So I think that's the other part of the buy-in. If that's a foreshadowing of what this is going to be like as we live out the plan, I think we're in good hands, because a lot of those safeguards are in place, that it just doesn't become a binder on a shelf, or we don't start losing interest. It's leadership proof, it's people proof, as it ebbs and flows and continues to evolve down the road.
As someone relatively new to the Topeka community, as you looked through the first plan, that very first report that Market Street put out, what did you recognize in there and say, oh, yeah, this is definitely a problem, or, oh, we're doing pretty well in this?
Right. So I think one of them, and Matt shared this too, him and I came about the same time, was that Topeka is the pretty girl that doesn't know how pretty she is yet. And I think so consequently she'd go to the dance with me. Not talking about you, Heidi, my lovely wife. But in any case, I've seen the evolution of our community. There are certain things that where some people just talk about the weather. Here we talk about why not, but then it's a discovery. And I like this is I meet with different people, or we travel, or we have family members come and visit us, and they're, wow, there's some good things going on, and there's a vibe, and so it's been really exciting from our vantage point at the newspaper, right, to be able to capture those stories, because people want to talk. And what I like as I read what you all put together, Morgan and the team, is that the number of people gathering around the table are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, which also tells me that there's sustainability. And so I think that's one thing when we talk about the different partners that have gathered around is this thing going to last? Does it kind of pass the longevity test? And I think it does. So I've seen that discovery. But then just how honest it was. We didn't bury the bad news with the good news. I mean, it was a true assessment of where we are as a community, being able to tackle those things and then say we choose to move forward.
Why is it important from a media perspective? How do we cover this, and how do we bring this to the community?
Right. Well, I think it continues the same honesty that we talk about, where we report the news, we can't create the news, right? And so the sense of discovery, because it's done holistically and honestly, that's how we do what we do. And so I think that helps. I think the audience side of it, where we can tell stories, as you see the publication that we put out, our Momentum 2022 publication on Sunday, but also the audience engagement that we enjoy. And so this reminds me that we're speaking beyond the borders of Shawnee County, our region, but as we look at some of the analytics of all you watching from afar, people are watching Shawnee County right now. And I love that, and I love that we are able to tell that story, and we are to capture those moments, or those quotes that people see, those excited utterances, those aha moments that we're able to capture, because I believe we're making history right now, and I love the fact that we're right there, and you and the team are doing a great job of capturing that, because I think this will almost be a playbook later on. Some of the things that we did really well, and because we're human, some of the missteps we made, how we course corrected, and how we are going to be and continue to evolve as that success story.
As you heard all those stories in the steering committee and talked about just a vast array of issues, how would you encourage an individual in the community to take this to heart and get involved?
Right. Well, I think one of the things is you've got to look at it. You've got to review it for yourself. As I would talk to different people, they had preconceived ideas of what this thing is, comparing it to things they've already experienced. So first of all, I'd say read it. Go to the source. Read it directly. Talk with those that are involved and that have been involved in the process. And so to me, surround yourself. And there's many opportunities to do that. I think of like Heartland Visioning and their meetings that we have on a monthly basis, or the different groups that were represented around the table is another way just to get involved. But go to the source. And that's what I love. We're doing the people's business in a very public, obvious, transparent way. So the things that are being talked about are completely available from start to finish, and people have an opportunity to look at that. And we've curated a lot of that content already. But again, go to the source, look at it, and join in the conversation.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And anyone wanting to learn more about the documents that have been printed, they're really detailed reports, 60 pages. I think most of them were 64. Go to Topeka, ShawneeCountyMomentum.com. And then we also have links on the Topeka Capital Journal website as well to those reports. Thank you so much.
Yes, thanks, Morgan. Yep.
Appreciate it.